I'm Olek Novak, this is Chasing Cars, and unlike most popular trends, the Volkswagen Touareg has recently gotten cheaper and also gained more equipment. When does that ever happen? Now, the recently facelifted vehicle has landed in Australia and it's some 6 years into its current third generation. Over that time, it's been a pretty well-regarded rig, something that sets out to deliver a more premium experience than vehicles like a Ford Everest or a Toyota Prado. Not only that, but it's also built on a platform that's shared with other significantly more expensive SUVs from the likes of Audi, Porsche and Lamborghini. So as a package, it all sounds pretty good, right? Now today, we've got the mid-spec 210 TDI Elegance, a grade that we've previously speculated might be a bit of a sweet spot in the range. So today, we're going to go for a spin to find out if the Volkswagen Touareg is the underappreciated large SUV you should be considering, and whether the 210 TDI Elegance is the grade you should be looking at. So let's find out the answer to those questions, but before we do, make sure you hit like, subscribe and the notification bell, and give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram too. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
So a quick recap, what has changed with the updated facelifted version of the Touareg? Well, the first thing is you've got updated wheel designs. We've got 20-inch wheels here on the 210 TDI Elegance. Not only that, but this was the first Volkswagen to sport the HD matrix headlamps over here, which are quite cool because they do fancy things like just illuminating the lane that you are in or illuminating the next lane when you are changing lanes. So that's quite cool. Not only that, but you've got a newly designed grille over here and updated intakes here as well in terms of the front fascia design. So that's quite cool. Up at the back of the vehicle, you've also got changes such as a full width rear light bar. Not only that, but you've got an illuminated Volkswagen badge as well, which is kind of cool. As well as that, there's been a few changes in the interior. So for example, the facelifted version has gained wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Previously, it was wired. Now, in terms of the design, what do you reckon of the design? I quite like it. I reckon it's got a nice understated elegance to it. It's premium, but it's not being gaudy. So I'm a fan, but let us know in the comment section what you think of the design of the Volkswagen Touareg. With the recent facelift of the Volkswagen Touareg, the 210 TDI Elegance was priced $8,000 more affordably than the pre-facelift model. So that move was designed to achieve a few things. First of all, it was designed to make the vehicle more affordable to more mainstream buyers, as opposed to positioning it at the higher, more luxury-focused end of the market. Not only that, but it was also a move designed to hopefully increase sales to where they were several years ago when the Touareg was priced more affordably. Thirdly, it was also done to make it a smaller and more attainable jump for those looking to step up from the Tiguan to the larger, more powerful 6-cylinder Touareg as well. Now, in times of inflation and constant price rises, the fact that this vehicle has gotten cheaper is significant. So where does the 210 TDI Elegance sit in the Touareg lineup? Well, you've essentially got 4 grades to choose from. That includes the 170 TDI entry grade model. Then you step up to the 210 TDI Elegance, then you've got the 210 TDI R-Line, and then the full fat Volkswagen Touareg R. Now, the 210 TDI Elegance is going to set you back $99,990 before options and before on-road costs. So it's going to cost you 13 grand more than the 170 TDI base model, but it's also 10K less than the 210 TDI R-Line. Now, you are getting a few additional features for stepping up to the 210 TDI Elegance as compared to the 170 TDI. And that includes features like bigger 20-inch alloy wheels, air suspension with auto self-leveling and adjustable height, and a few more interior luxuries, which we'll chat about shortly. If you step up to the R-Line, you're gaining additions like a black styling pack, 21-inch wheels, privacy glass, 48-volt active roll stabilization, and 4-wheel steering, plus a few more additional interior luxuries too. Or for $130,000, you can step up to the full-fat plug-in hybrid R for maximum power, maximum luxury, and 51 kilometers of all-electric range. Now, make sure you check out our launch review video of the 170 TDI and also our walk-around video of the Volkswagen Touareg R if you haven't already. The cabin of the 210 TDI Elegance is a really nice place to be, and I think for an SUV that's about 6 years old, it strikes a nice balance between still actually looking quite modern and achieving a good balance between having a bit of showroom appeal but not going overboard with the glitz and glamour as well. Now, my subjective personal preference in terms of my taste with interior design is for those more integrated dash designs as opposed to those really screen heavy iPad-like floating screen interior designs. And now, while this design is really screen heavy, it is nicely integrated, so I think it has a cohesive, more traditional kind of appeal to it, despite the fact that it is quite techy. So let's chat about the screens. First things first, you've got a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster in front of you. Now it's quite clear and crisp. It does a good job. There's a bit of configurability to it. Now in terms of some downsides, this is nitpicking, but I had two little niggles during my time with the car, and that is when you are using the traditional kind of dial display, there is no 80-kilometer mark limit. It goes 60 to 100, and that caught me out a few times looking at the speedometer for a bit longer to figure out where that 80 mark was. So that'd be nice if they had that. There is the digital speedometer that is constantly displayed below that, but it's quite small and at the bottom of the screen. So it'd be nice if there was a configuration where that was more prominent in the middle of the dials or a bit bigger. So that is two things to note in that regard. Now, aside from the digital screen in front of you, you've got a very big 15-inch central touch screen over here. And for the most part, it works really well. The size is great. It means that all the controls are really clear, really visible. Apple CarPlay, which I've been using the majority of the functionality for, had very big buttons. So it was really nice and easy to engage with. It's pretty intuitive. The graphics seem pretty okay. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as well. Some little annoyances, which we have mentioned in previous reviews, is the fact that when you are using the climate controls, it means that it blacks out the screen when I was in Apple CarPlay mode before you have to then get out of the climate controls to see what you were doing beforehand. So that's a bit annoying. And I guess there is the fact that all of the climate controls and most functionalities are actually, you'll see this is a very buttonless interior. It's all buried in the screen over there. So that is just something to consider if you have a personal preference for buttons. Obviously, we don't want to go into cliche car review territory there, but there aren't any shortcut buttons. So for example, if you want to get back to Google Maps that you've been using in CarPlay, but to another screen, for example, maybe you're using the digital radio, it takes a few steps to get back to it, as opposed to there being a clear, quick shortcut button. So that's just something to consider, but overall the screen worked pretty well. In terms of other features, so you've got a reversing camera, 360-degree surround view as well. Not the best quality I've experienced, but you've got it, which is good. In terms of other features, so you've got two cup holders over here. You've got a rafter USB-C port, so you've got one over here. You've got a 12-volt socket next to it. You've got a wireless phone charging pad. You can close this like so. Now you've got dual zone climate control as well. I also appreciate the double sunshade too. Here in the center armrest, you've got two more USB-C connections as well. Speaking of, in terms of storage, so you do have this nice little center console compartment over here, and it's quite nice because you've got a little light in there, and it's also lined with cloth-like fabric in here. So that's a nice little premium touch. In terms of other storage areas, so you've got the glove box over here, which isn't massively capacious, but you've got one. Again, it's lined as well, which is nice. Then you've also got the door bins over here, which look pretty large, and a little storage section over here, which is also lined between the steering wheel and the doors. Now, the cabin feels really solidly built in, well screwed together. Everything has a nice high quality feel to it. And in terms of materials, they're all feeling of a really good high grade, as well as you'd expect for an SUV where you're paying a bit more money for that more premium experience. Perhaps if you go looking down here at the bottom of the doors where the door bins are, there's maybe some hard plastic there. Again, they are lined, which is good, but overall for the most part, everywhere you touch feels pretty good. As well as that, you would have noticed in the 210 TDI Elegance that we are in, we have the Mistral Grey leather seats. So the 210 TDI Elegance comes with a higher grade Verena leather compared to what you get on the 170 TDI. You can get an even higher grade Puglia leather if you step up to the R-Line, but on this grade we have with us, you can choose the light or the black, and I think with the light leather it actually really looks nice. You've got some light grey headlining over here that contrasts nicely with the darker grey leather on the dash, and also the ash grain over here, and then contrasting that you've got the light grey leather, which I think overall is really nice. Some other features that the 210 TDI Elegance gets over the 170 TDI are ventilated front seats. So you get heated front seats across the range, but you've got the addition of those ventilation, which is nice on the 210 TDI Elegance. You also get the addition of some pretty comprehensive massaging functionality, which I've been using a lot of. So you've got quite a few different versions of that to choose from. And that is a really solid feature. There's lots of functionalities and it does a really good job. So I've really been enjoying the massage functionality. You definitely won't regret that if you do step up to the 210 TDI Elegance. The seats are also really nice and comfortable. You've got a good driving position. The steering wheel is quite nice in the hand. It looks really nice too. There's a lot of adjustability here with the seats. You've got lumbar adjustment, you've got electric seats, you've got 3 memory settings as well for the driver's seat over here as well. The cabin ambience in the back of the 210 TDI Elegance is really good. So let's start with roominess, and for me at 183 centimeters tall, the room is quite adequate. So headroom is good, knee room is also good. I'm sitting in a relatively far back driving position, and legroom is solid. I've got good toe room there as well. Nitpicking, perhaps some more under thigh support would be nice, but overall it's pretty good. So the good thing is though that you can adjust the seats forward and backwards as well if you want to create a bit more space in the rear. So that's quite good, and you can also recline them as well and move them forward if you want a more upright driving position as well. So that's good to have that adjustability. So look, the outer seats, they're quite comfortable for a long journey. Very nice cabin to be in. Again, the Mistral grey leather upholstery definitely helps with that, creating that nice cabin ambience. You've got good visibility. You don't feel too cocooned in here. The materials are actually pretty good, so it doesn't feel like you get skimped out on materials in the rear. You've got a nice door bin over here as well, although again, like the front, that's a bit more plasticky, but it is lined at the bottom, which is good. You've got other amenities here like map pockets on either side of the car, as well as that you've got two rear air vents over here. You've got a little section over here for small items, I guess, although it isn't very deep. And then over here, if you open this compartment here, you've got a 12-volt connection and two USB-C connection points here. Now, while I did mention the outer seats are quite comfortable, the middle seat, so you do have a relatively pronounced transmission tunnel, so that is something to bear in mind, and the mid seat isn't quite as comfortable. But you do get a center armrest folding down with two cup holders here and a little piccolo holder there as well, or macchiato, depending on what kind of miniature coffee you like. And of course, another good item that you've also got is a sunshade for both sides in the rear. So that's really good. You've also got a light over here and a hook over here. And you've also got another little connection point over here for the netted compartment divider as well. All right, so in terms of boot space, we're gonna open the electric powered tailgate on the back of the Touareg to reveal 810 litres of boot space. Now, when you do fold the rear seats down, that's going to reveal 1800 litres of boot space. So this is a capacious boot. It's quite good. Now, there are quite a lot of interior amenities and additional features. I might start with a cool one, is that you can lower the air suspension to just help with loading bulky items into the vehicle as well. So we can put it down. We can also put it up a bit, which you might be able to see on camera. Apart from that, you've got a 12-volt socket above that as well. Over here, you've got some quick release for the seat, although you will need to go around to push them down further. It just drops them slightly. Not only that, but you've got a lot of different amenities here. So you've got a little cargo net to keep your items tied down. You've got some partitions to keep luggage in place. And you've also got a net partition as well that you can use just behind the rear seats too. Not only that, but you've got some lights over here on the left-hand side, and you've got a cargo cover over here as well that is retractable. Now, in terms of downsides, that is probably the fact that you don't get a full-size spare wheel, but instead you get an inflatable Space Saver spare wheel in there. You also get some shopping bag hooks on either side of the vehicle as well. Now, in terms of towing, the Volkswagen 210 TDI has a maximum braked towing capacity of 3,500 kilograms. So that is a big selling point. But one thing to consider when you're looking at the lineup is the fact that the 210 TDI has the lowest maximum downball weight that you can have. So it is 210 kilos for this vehicle, but the 170 TDI is actually better in that regard. So it's got a maximum downball weight of 280 kilograms. So that is definitely something to consider. Despite the extra power of this one, which is no doubt good for towing, the maximum downball weight is the best in the 170 TDI. So what about running costs? Well, the Volkswagen Touareg is covered by Volkswagen's 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty. Not only that, but service intervals are every 12 months or every 15,000 kilometres. A 5-year service plan is going to set you back $3,500 for the Touareg too. Now, in terms of claimed fuel economy, the claim is 7.4 litres for every 100 kilometres for the 210 TDI Elegance. Now, it's got a 90 litre fuel tank, so that'll equate to about 1,200 kilometres of range. There's also a 24 litre AdBlue tank as well to consider.
In terms of real-world performance, you can expect to see results between between 7 and 10 litres per 100 kilometres, depending on how hardly the Touareg is driven.
Now in terms of safety, the Volkswagen Touareg has a 5-star NCAP crash test safety rating. Now across the entire range, regardless of grade, you're also getting a full suite of active and passive safety features. So that includes the likes of autonomous emergency braking, front and rear cross traffic alert, lane keep assist, lane centering assist, adaptive cruise control, semi-automated parking assistance, a driver fatigue detection system, a dynamic road sign display, and blind spot monitoring. Now, over my time with the Touareg, I found the safety systems to be pretty well calibrated. I didn't experience any overt intrusions or anything of the such. I used the adaptive cruise control quite a bit over a highway drive, and it performed pretty well too. So how does the Volkswagen Touareg 210 TDI drive? Well, overall, really nicely and really competently. Now, naturally, this is a big, large SUV, so to some extent it drives like one, but I think it drives like a really good one. Now, unlike its body-on-frame competitors like the more mainstream Prado and Everest, this is a unibody vehicle, and it's built on the Volkswagen Group's MLB platform, which means that it's got relation to much more upmarket vehicles like the Lamborghini Urus, the Audi Q7 and Q8, the Porsche Cayenne, and the Bentley Bentayga. Now, naturally, that doesn't mean that this is a cheap version of those vehicles, but overall it does feel like a pretty premium experience. And you'd be hoping to get that if you are spending $100,000 on a large SUV. And the fact it does have some relation to those vehicles is a cool thing. Now let's start with the powertrain. The V6 turbo diesel, it's strong, it's really muscular, and it pulls really well. It's a vehicle that's definitely not lacking in power. The Touareg 210 TDI is powered by a 3-litre turbo diesel V6, delivering 210 kilowatts of power and 600 Newton meters of torque, paired with an 8-speed auto and full-time 4-wheel drive system and a claimed 0 to 100 km/h sprint of 6 seconds. That compares to the 170 TDI, which delivers 170 kilowatts and 500 Newton meters and a slower 0 to 100 km/h sprint of 8 seconds. Now, I haven't driven the 170 TDI, so I can't compare them directly. And I know from comments of my colleagues who have driven that vehicle that it's not a vehicle that is lacking in power at all, but I don't think you'd be left regretting going for the more powerful vehicle in this regard. It is a really strong powertrain in that sense, and it couples really nicely with the automatic transmission, which does a good job. It's quite smooth shifting and it works well with the engine. Now, another note about the powertrain is, so we've got a diesel here, but overall this is quite a refined vehicle. So diesels can be really loud, really unrefined, but in this SUV, it's relatively muted. So you can hear it, you can hear what it's doing, but it's not intrusive. It's there enough to let you know what's going on, but overall it's quite a quiet vehicle to be in. So the level of refinement in the Volkswagen Touareg is quite good in terms of it being quite a quiet vehicle. Just a note on the transmission as well, if you want to take matters into your own hands, you can use the paddle shifters mounted on the steering wheel too. Now, what about the steering, the ride and handling? Well, let's start with the steering, and all I will say in that regard is that it's a really nice setup. I feel it feels quite natural, smooth, it's really progressive, well weighted. I think that's a good way to describe it. It's not too light, it's not too heavy either. It just feels like a good setup for the vehicle. In terms of the ride and handling, so the handling of the vehicle is quite competent, I would say. So naturally it's a big, large SUV, so you're not going to be driving it like a hot hatch, but I think for the most part it's got pretty decent body control. It feels very planted, whether you're on a windy road or particularly if you're on a freeway or a highway. But overall, it handles pretty decently, and I think it can probably thank its underpinnings on the MLB platform and its unibody chassis in that regard. Now, where the vehicle does have another positive is in terms of its ride. So that is a big difference with the 170 TDI. That 170 TDI runs on a steel spring suspension setup, whereas the 210 TDI steps it up to an air suspension setup. So you are paying more for this vehicle, but you are getting that more sophisticated suspension setup. And that is a good thing, because overall, I wouldn't say the vehicle is the last word in road comfort and ride, but it is very good. It is a very comfortable vehicle. It seems to take the worst out of bumps, and overall it delivers a really nice composure and a good quality ride experience, I would say. Now, if you are tossing up getting this vehicle, this grade versus the base entry grade 170 TDI, then I would again recommend watching our review of the 170 TDI by our production specialist Tom Place, in which he detailed his experience with that car. Now, I haven't driven the 170 TDI. Tom noted that the ride quality was acceptable in that car and wasn't too bad, but again, if you are after that most premium luxury experience, then it is probably worth considering stepping up to the 210 TDI for that suspension setup. Now, if you want to liven things up in your drive experience with the 210 Elegance, then you can use the drive mode selector over here to cycle between eco, comfort, normal, sport, individual, off-road and snow modes in the vehicle. So obviously if you put things into sport, you can liven things up. You can also take control of the transmission by using the steering mounted paddle shifters as well. Now, one thing I do appreciate with the drive mode selector is that you do have a physical dial over here where you can cycle between the different drive modes, and the fact that it's easy to access, it's always there, rather than having to use the screen and cycle through different menu settings to change the drive mode. I think that's a really good thing. The Touareg does emit a lot of physical buttons for things like the climate control, but it at least has it for that. Now, you've also got a physical dial over here to control the adaptive air suspension, where you can cycle through a few different settings, including if you just want the air suspension to be set up for normal driving, or if you want it set up for off-road driving, for off-road driving plus, or for if you're carrying a load as well. Now, the brakes in this vehicle are also quite good. They feel really natural. It's got good stopping power, and that's good for a vehicle that weighs over 2 tons. So that's another positive aspect. But ultimately what the Touareg delivers is a really compelling package that blends a bit of everything. It's got a decently premium cabin. It rides really nicely and comfortably. It's got good tech for its age, which is very compelling as well. Its price has come down, it's got more features, it drives very nicely, and it makes a strong case for itself as a large SUV, particularly in this 210 TDI Elegance grade. In some senses, you could possibly describe it as a bit of a luxury sleeper car. It's got a dignified kind of presence to it, and I was chatting with a colleague in the office about it recently, and they used the word stealth wealth to describe it, in the fact that it's a vehicle that is a bit premium, but it's not trying too hard to shout about it. So in that regard, I definitely appreciate that aspect of this vehicle. It's a pretty elegant vehicle, so I guess the mid-spec Elegance is aptly named in that sense. So those are my thoughts on the Volkswagen Touareg 210 TDI Elegance, a very solid large SUV that delivers a sturdy, comfortable and dignified premium SUV experience. Not only that, but it's more affordable, it has more features, and it's got a design that I think is aging quite gracefully after a number of years in the market. So it's a really strong package that one should definitely consider if you are looking for a large SUV, and in particular, a large premium SUV, and you can stretch a bit further in terms of your budget. But those are just my thoughts on the Volkswagen Touareg. We'd love to know what you have to think. Do you like the Touareg? Do you think it is aging well? Do you think the 210 TDI Elegance is the sweet spot in the range, or would you be looking somewhere else in the lineup? Or would you be looking at a competitor entirely? And if so, which one? Let us know in the comment section down below. While you're there, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell. And also give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram for lots of daily content and behind the scenes videos too. But as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.